Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Army Men of War Story Time. So, it's only a quick video tonight as it's spring cleaning day, and today is the day where I get through all my laundry and I just make sure that my apartment looks great. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, so only a quick video tonight. So, this video is going to be about the rise of the Grey Empire and how it came to be. So, I've had a lot of questions lately asking, how did the Greys, get onto those little islands? How did they become so strong? What is their manpower? And so on and so forth. So I'm going to read this little document out to you all, which I've written. And it starts after the Great Migration from the south. And the Grey tribes, basically, they were getting oppressed and they were sick of the wars. They were sick of the wars with the newly established Greens, and they migrated north to seek refuge away from the wars and oppression of their neighbours. They marched so far that grass turned to snow and land became water, and that is what you can see right there. Look, we can see on the battle map, this is 500 years before the current state of affairs in our series, and we can see that the Greys have came north. This is currently where Redingrad would have been. So if we look at the map, look, we can see that there's no wall. We can see that that town is still there. That's Ruskengrad, before it was named Ruskengrad, of course, because the First Great Plastic War was 200 years before where we are in the series now, and this is 500 years before where we are in the series right now. So anyway, these guys settled on the northern coast, trying to get away from all the wars and all the tribal fighting, and they settled up here. And this is what became modern-day Redingrad. They set up the basis of what Redingrad was. And it came to a point, right, where they prospered by fishing in the northern seas, which you can see right there, and they started mining the rare resources of plasticium in the local area. And plasticium is a rock that the plastics use to trade. It powers their homes, and it fuels their vehicles. It's even used as a currency in modern day. Well, it would have been used as a currency more back then than it would have been as a fuel, obviously, because this is like the olden days of Army Men of War. So anyway, this new resource enabled the ability to research and construct the first ever portal to the human dimension. So these guys right here, they invented the portal. The Greys invented the portal with plasticium, and they harnessed the power of the plasticium into the portals, and they created the first ever, what is it, like time traveling, I guess, to another dimension. We could perhaps compare it to time travel, and they managed to get some people from the this dimension, the plastic dimension, over to the human dimension. Oh, I'm getting some messages on Facebook. I don't know why I didn't mute it. But yes, anyway, so this new resource enabled the ability of research and construction of the first portal. They harnessed the newly discovered power of the plasticium ore by combining heat with the refined metal, which is called plastic ingot. So they turned the plasticium ore into plastic ingot. And with this ingot, they could trade it, they could melt it down, they could do anything with it, really. Obviously, back then, though, it was more of a tradable resource. So the Greys' main goal was to build up the economy, so great that it would prosper for thousands of years to come. And they also wanted to be the most #1 nation in all of Plastica. I mean, if you was a general or a king in Plastica, I mean, you'd probably want to be the best yourself, wouldn't you? So the Reds, on the other hand, hated that the Greys were doing so well. So they decided that they wanted what the Greys had, and they massed this huge army, this massive, massive army, and they marched them onto the now Grey capital in the north. And the Greys were like, well, what are we going to do? We can't beat this massive army. It literally shook the ground as they marched. So the Greys built ships, and they used these ships to travel across from here all the way over to Graal. First of all, they landed on this island, and then they started to colonize all the other islands bit by bit. And doing this secured them a new territory from which they could call home. So yes, let's have a read of the next bit. Field Marshal Greyvern was the one that led the party of over 100 men through the portal before it was destroyed, but it took a lot of power to harness, it took a lot to harness the power of this portal. So they had to use all the plasticium that they had, or pretty much most of it. So that was pretty much their whole economy. So the Greys practically had to start again, and the Reds swooped in and stole everything that they had. So the Greys set sail with what's left of their plasticium ore across the northern seas. This is where they stumbled upon what is now called Graal. Over 200,000 Greys landed on the different islands. First they set up camps, then they became villages, and over hundreds of years the villages turned into cities. So we can move these Reds over here, we can put them in this lovely town here. So they would have took control of Redingrad, and this would have been the birth of Redingrad. Obviously it's more in that position right here, towards the end of where we are at the moment in the series. So we're looking at like 500 years in the future. It expands from the coastline all the way over to about here. I mean, you can still see the square from where I deleted it for this video. So that's where Redingrad was right there, and this is how it began. So anyway, the Greys literally found a new home, and they all started fighting amongst themselves over who was to govern each island. And over many years, the population came out of control. They just had all kinds of problems and things like that. So they elected their first ever Grey Emperor to unite all of the Grey Kingdoms under one banner, and that was Kaiser Greyhelm I. So Kaiser Greyhelm I, he built the world's first ever island fortress. It was basically a kingdom with other kingdoms being used as its walls. So the Kaiser, if we just select this dude and represent him as the Kaiser, he would have set up his main city in the center right here on this central island, and he made this whole Isle of Graal, which kind of looks like a dinosaur's head, surprisingly enough. And that's like the eyeball. And he made it so these islands represented the walls of his kingdom. So he built dams, and he used the dams to harness natural power using the water to generate the power for his nation. And they also acted as giant gates as well. So anyway, everything was perfect for the Greys, and their reputation as the quiet nation gained them much respect and notoriety. It wasn't until the first Great Plastic Wars from 300 years after these events that the Grey Nation finally came out of its years of self-reliability. Its resources had run out, and its economy started to dwindle, so all the plasticium on the Grey Isles started to become smaller and smaller and smaller, and they were worried that they were going to run out. So they were like, what are we going to do? We're going to literally fall into a Great Depression, and our whole economy, the stock market, everything's just going to crash, and crash hard as well, which means that the Grey Nation would just start fighting amongst themselves. Everyone would start leaving. I mean, there's just no point in having a great empire without any sort of valuable currency or tradable income or source or whatever. I don't know, and plasticium is the thing that powers them. I mean, they're the most advanced nation. So what they did was they looked to the Red Empire. And even though the Red Empire were their enemies a couple of hundred years before, they were like, well, they've kind of got a new government now, as the first Red Union just came into play at the end of the first Great Plastic War. So they were like, we'll just go to this guy called Ruskan, and he will help us out. And they did just that. They sent emissaries across the sea, and Ruskan was like, yep, sure, we'll help you out. We've just started this new thing called unionism. And what he did was he allied the Grey Empire with the Red Union, the first Red Union, and he also allied them with the Old Tan Empire, which is located down here, excuse the lag. And this is the Old Tan Empire. The capital of the Old Tan Empire at this time would have been over here, which is Istanbul. And then later on, in the part of the series that we're in at the moment, they moved it over to here, which is Tangiers. So we're just going to, let me just delete that. That's not supposed to be there. Obviously, we're not going to have plasticium ore mines 500 years before. That just doesn't make sense. I mean, they would have had like quarries back then. So anyway, so that's how they did it. So they allied with the Reds, and they also allied with the Old Tan Empire, and they became an independent sort of unionist nation. All three nations combined. And unionism is made up of fascism, socialism, and also communism all rolled into one. And one thing that Unionism has always said, they've always said, we hate the West, we hate the imperialists. So that's one thing that the Unionists hate, and that's imperialism. And imperialism in Army Men of War has a different meaning to the imperialism we have in real life. And imperialism in Army Men of War is where a monarch or king gets to make his own rules and he can conquer other territories. So let's say in the First Great Plastic War, the Green King came over to the Tan Empire and conquered the Tan Empire. That would turn the king into an emperor if he proclaimed that's what he wanted. So yeah, so that's what imperialism is in my series. It's where people can make up their own rules if they're the rightful monarch and they're the rightful leader of their nation. And the Unionists hate that because they believe that they should work together and they believe that everyone should be equal and all things like that. So anyway, they looked to the Red Empire, as silly as it sounds, and they were hesitant at first to approach the very people who drove them out of the mainlands. But after hearing of the revolution, they saw their chance to unite themselves with the Reds, and Tsar Ruskin, the new leader of the First Red Union, did just that by allying the Great Empire with the first ever newly established UPP, which was the Unionist People's Party. This provided a trade agreement that shares resources between the Tan Empire, the Red Union, and now the Great Empire. This new ideology required a name change for the Greys, and they became known as the Free People of Growl. This new trade agreement benefited all of the torn nations of the First Great Plastic War, and a torn nation is the ones that lost the First Great Plastic War, and the ideology of unionism got them out of an economic crisis that could have lasted all these nations over 1,000 years. So we're talking war debt, we're talking attrition, we're talking famine, everything. So all different nations needed certain things, like the Red Union would have needed food, they would have needed time to repair their buildings. They lost half of their country. That's when they built the wall over to Eastern Britannia. And yeah, so the Red Union wasn't in a very good way. That's why they looked to the new Unionist government to get them out of this little ruckus. And that's why they allied with the Greys and the Tans. Well, the old Tan Empire, it would have been. So they're nothing like the Tans that we have in the series at the moment. So, but unknowingly, the signing of the treaty with the Reds and the Tan Empire also made them a military ally of the Red Union, which was not good because that means that the Greys, even though they're allies with the Reds and the Tans, the Red Union was in charge of all imports, exports of plasticium, food, everything into the Great Isles. Everything that the Greys were missing, the Reds were in charge of sending over to them. And it was the Greys as well. The Greys had a lot of food. They had a great abundance of money as well. You know, ingots and stuff like that they could have sent over. Obviously, burning through your ingots as a resource would have sent the nation into a giant, credit crunch or something. It would have just destroyed their economy. So I hope this made sense as a video. Obviously, these are just new ideas which have been floating around my head, but I feel like it makes a lot of sense to why the Greys became a real supreme power in this series and why they have so many men. I mean, the manpower, what did I write down as the manpower? I think it was something, it was in the millions. I think it was around 8 million or something like that as a population in the current series. And out of 8 million people, you can have quite a big army. Maybe an army of, you could probably have 2 million soldiers in your army. And I've been getting a lot of questions lately saying, why have the Greys got so many men? Why have they got so much money? And that's because the Greys, not so much the Tans now, the Tangerians it'll be now, and the Reds, they all work together. They have one economy now, and they all use it together. They build new soldiers, recruit new soldiers, and so on and so forth. So, and you can imagine out of millions and millions of soldiers, or millions of population, that they're going to have quite big armies. And despite how many men have died in this war so far, there's no way that they could have lost all of their troops. I want somebody to go back through the videos, count up how many men have died in each video, and I think it's impossible, but it still wouldn't even equal in the hundreds of thousands, in my opinion. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. The Greys are presently now a part of the GOR Alliance Treaty, which has kind of evolved from the old alliances. Their involvement in the war now acts as a thank you for the UPP's intervention, the Unionist People's Party's intervention in saving the grey economy many years before, so they feel like they owe them a debt and all that sort of stuff. So I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you want to see more story times and things like that, just quick videos like this, do let me know in the comments. Also, tell me your feedback. Tell me what you think. Should we add anything else? Do you think there's anything that would really sound cool in the series? I do read all the comments, so be sure to leave me one, and I'll be sure to love it if I enjoyed your comments. So anyway, I'm MightyMapper123. Be sure to smash that like button and also drop a bomb on a subscribe button. Now pushing on 40,000 subscribers, and I will see you all in the next one.